Admiral Korrath had seen empires crumble beneath the weight of his armadas. For 60 years he had commanded the most feared battle fleet in the Dominion, watching civilizations kneel before the sight of his 1,000 warships blotting out their suns. Today should have been no different. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The small blue planet rotating slowly beneath his flagship represented nothing more than another conquest, another species to be cataloged and claimed for the Dominion's ever-expanding territory. The neural interface buzzed against his temple as tactical data streamed directly into his consciousness. Population density maps, resource assessments, defensive capability analyses. All the information painted the same picture that had become numbingly familiar over the decades. A primitive species barely capable of interplanetary travel, divided into competing factions, possessed of technology that belonged in a museum compared to Dominion standards. Their most advanced weapons were chemical propellants and crude fusion devices. Against the Dominion's quantum disruptors and reality manipulation fields, they might as well have been throwing stones. Korrath's primary intelligence officer, Commander Vexis, materialized beside his command throne in a shimmer of transported energy. Her pale blue skin bore the distinctive ridge patterns of the Zenthari, one of the first species to join the Dominion willingly after witnessing what happened to those who resisted. The holographic display she carried showed detailed scans of the planet's major population centers. "Admiral, the preliminary surveys are complete," Vexis reported with the crisp efficiency that had earned her position on his command staff. "The species calls themselves humans. They've achieved basic space travel within their own system but lack faster-than-light capability. Military assessment indicates conventional conquest protocols will be more than sufficient." Korrath studied the rotating planet with eyes that had witnessed the fall of the Kalani Empire and the dissolution of the Morphic Collective. This assignment felt almost insulting to someone of his stature. High Command typically reserved missions of this nature for junior fleet commanders seeking to prove themselves. The fact that they had assigned him suggested either extreme caution or complete disregard for his capabilities. "What makes this particular species noteworthy enough to warrant our attention?" Korrath asked, gesturing for Vexis to expand the tactical display. "Surely there are more strategically valuable targets requiring our immediate focus." Vexis touched her neural interface, causing the hologram to shift focus towards several large orbital installations surrounding the planet. "Intelligence suggests they possess something called emotional resonance fields that our scientists believe could enhance our psychic warfare capabilities. The preliminary scans indicate these humans generate unusually strong empathic signatures that might be weaponized with proper refinement." The Admiral nodded slowly, understanding now why High Command had assigned him personally to this mission. The Dominion's expansion had slowed in recent cycles as they encountered species with increasingly sophisticated mental defenses. A race capable of generating powerful emotional fields could provide the breakthrough needed to overcome such resistance. The humans would be valuable not for their technology or resources, but for their biological potential as psychic amplifiers. "Standard pacification protocols, then," Korrath decided, settling back into his command throne. "Disable their communication networks, neutralize orbital defenses, and prepare specimen collection teams. We'll need live subjects for the emotional resonance experiments." The next several hours proceeded exactly as countless similar operations had before. Dominion advanced scouts materialized in Earth's atmosphere, their stealth fields rendering them invisible to human detection systems. Communication satellites went silent as quantum viruses infected their networks. Military installations found their weapon systems mysteriously offline as nanoscale infiltrators rewrote their control software. By the time human governments realized they were under attack, their ability to coordinate any meaningful response had been eliminated. Korrath observed the systematic dismantling of human defenses with the detached professionalism of someone who had orchestrated similar operations on dozens of worlds. His tactical officers called out status reports in the calm, measured tones of experienced veterans. Orbital defense platforms neutralized. Communication infrastructure compromised. Military command centers isolated. Each milestone brought them closer to the inevitable moment when human leadership would be forced to acknowledge their complete helplessness. The surrender broadcast came exactly when Korrath's psychological warfare specialists had predicted. A middle-aged human male appeared on the main display surrounded by what appeared to be other government officials in a location that scans identified as an underground bunker beneath one of their major cities. The man's features bore the unmistakable signs of stress and exhaustion that Korrath had learned to recognize in defeated leaders across the galaxy. "This is President Marshall of the United Earth Government," the human began, his voice carrying the weight of someone about to sacrifice everything he had sworn to protect. "We acknowledge that we are completely outmatched by your technological superiority. We formally surrender and request mercy for our civilian population." Korrath activated his own transmission system, allowing his image to appear on screens across the human homeworld. He had refined this particular speech over decades of conquest, adapting it to the psychology of each new species while maintaining its fundamental message of absolute dominion. "People of Earth," he began, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed without question. "I am Admiral Korrath of the Stellar Dominion. Your world has been claimed as property of our empire. You will be relocated to designated zones where your cooperation will be evaluated. Those who prove useful will be permitted to continue existing. Those who resist will be eliminated." The transmission ended, leaving Earth's population to contemplate their new reality, while Korrath's forces prepared for the final phase of occupation. Massive transport ships descended through the atmosphere toward major population centers, their holds configured to carry millions of human specimens to processing facilities in distant star systems. Everything was proceeding according to established doctrine. Then something happened that had never occurred in Korrath's 60 years of military service. The transport ship designated Delta 7 was conducting routine specimen collection in a human settlement that tactical analysis had identified as a high-value target. The location contained a significant concentration of young humans, whose emotional resonance patterns showed the strongest potential for psychic amplification. Collection teams had been ordered to prioritize these individuals for immediate transport to the Dominion's biological research facilities. Sergeant Thane commanded the collection unit assigned to what humans called a school, a facility where they gathered their offspring for education and socialization. His squad consisted of 12 Dominion soldiers equipped with neural suppression devices designed to prevent psychic resistance from captured subjects. The operation should have been routine, requiring no more than standard crowd control procedures. The building contained approximately 300 young humans ranging in estimated age from 5 to 12 years by human standards. Collection protocols required separating the subjects by age group and emotional resonance strength, prioritizing those who showed the highest psychic potential. Medical scanning had identified 27 individuals whose neural patterns indicated exceptional value for research purposes. Thane's soldiers moved through the building methodically, using neural scanners to identify priority targets while herding the remaining humans into containment areas. The young humans displayed typical fear responses, clustering together and crying for absent parental figures. Some attempted to hide, while others froze completely when confronted by soldiers in full tactical armor. All reactions fell within expected parameters for this type of operation. The primary collection target was a human child approximately 6 years old whose emotional resonance readings exceeded anything previously recorded. Scanner data indicated psychic potential that could revolutionize the Dominion's warfare capabilities if properly harnessed. The child had been located in a small room with several other young humans, separated from the main population during the initial containment phase. Private Zek was assigned to collect the high-value target. He had participated in dozens of similar operations across multiple worlds, always maintaining strict adherence to Dominion protocols regarding specimen handling. Contact with subjects was to be minimized to prevent emotional contamination that might interfere with later research. Physical interaction was limited to whatever force was necessary to ensure compliance. The child was smaller than Zek had expected, with pale skin and large brown eyes that seemed to track his movements with unusual awareness. Most young subjects at this age became catatonic when confronted by Dominion soldiers, but this one remained alert and responsive despite obvious fear. The neural scanner confirmed exceptional psychic potential, marking the specimen as potentially the most valuable acquisition of the entire operation. Zek reached down to place the standard neural suppression collar around the child's neck, a routine procedure he had performed countless times before. The device would prevent any psychic interference while maintaining the subject's consciousness for transport. His armored gauntlet made contact with the child's small shoulder as he positioned the collar. In that instant, something extraordinary happened. The moment Zeke's hand touched the human child, every piece of advanced technology within a 50-kilometer radius simply stopped working. Not damaged, not destroyed, not disabled by some external force, but simply ceased to function as if the fundamental laws of physics had been temporarily suspended. The neural suppression collar became an inert piece of metal. Zek's armor systems went silent, his weapon powered down completely. The effect spread outward from the point of contact like ripples on a pond, moving at the speed of thought through every Dominion vessel in the system. Transport ships fell from the sky as their anti-gravity generators failed. Weapon systems that had taken centuries to develop became useless chunks of refined metal. Life support systems shut down across the entire fleet, leaving thousands of soldiers suddenly dependent on emergency reserves. But the most terrifying part was not the technology failure itself, it was the absolute silence that followed. Korrath felt the neural interface disconnect from his consciousness like a severed nerve. The constant stream of tactical data that had guided his decisions for decades simply vanished, leaving him alone with his thoughts for the first time in years. Around him, the command bridge descended into chaos as officers struggled to understand what had happened to their systems. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "Report!" Korrath shouted, his voice echoing strangely in the suddenly quiet space. Without the subtle background hum of advanced technology, the bridge felt unnaturally hollow. "All systems offline, Admiral," replied Commander Vexis, her own neural implants dark and lifeless. "Engineering reports complete power failure across all networks. Backup systems are non-responsive. Even basic communication devices have ceased functioning." The main display, which moments before had shown detailed tactical information about the human planet, now showed nothing but empty blackness. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows across control panels that had become nothing more than decorative fixtures. For the first time in his military career, Korrath found himself commanding a fleet that was completely blind and powerless. "How extensive is the failure?" he demanded, though part of him already suspected the answer would be worse than anything he could imagine. "Preliminary reports from other ships indicate system-wide shutdown," Vexis replied, consulting a primitive paper notepad that she had retrieved from her personal effects. "Communication with ground forces has been completely severed. We have no way to determine their status or coordinate any response." Korrath moved to the main viewport, staring down at the planet that had somehow rendered his entire armada helpless in a matter of seconds. Earth continued its slow rotation beneath them, appearing completely unchanged, despite having just accomplished something that should have been absolutely impossible. No species in recorded galactic history had ever demonstrated the capability to disable Dominion technology on such a scale. The implications were staggering. If humans possessed weapons capable of this level of technological disruption, every previous intelligence assessment had been catastrophically wrong. The Dominion's entire strategic doctrine was built around technological superiority over primitive species. The possibility that a faster-than-light civilization could neutralize their most advanced systems challenged everything the Empire had believed about galactic warfare. But as Korrath studied the planet below, he realized that something else was happening beyond simple technology failure. Through the viewport, he could see Dominion transport ships falling through Earth's atmosphere like burning meteors. Without their anti-gravity systems, the massive vessels were subject to planetary gravity and atmospheric friction. Most would be completely destroyed before reaching the surface, killing everyone aboard. The scale of the disaster became clear as emergency communication systems finally came back online after several hours of complete silence. Ship after ship reported catastrophic casualties as vessels crashed into mountains, oceans, and populated areas. Soldiers who had survived the initial technology failure found themselves stranded on a hostile planet without any means of contacting their fleet or requesting extraction. Commander Vexis managed to establish contact with a few ground units that had portable communication equipment unaffected by whatever had disabled their advanced systems. The reports were uniformly grim. Collection teams had been abandoned when their transport ships lost power and crashed. Soldiers were scattered across the planet's surface, many injured and all cut off from command authority. "Sergeant Thane's unit is reporting from the specimen collection site," Vexis announced. reading from a message transcribed by one of the few functioning communication devices. He confirms that the technology failure originated from direct contact with a human child. All equipment within the area became non-functional simultaneously. Korrath felt something he had not experienced in decades of military service. Not just surprise or confusion, but genuine fear. The idea that a single touch from a human child could neutralize the most advanced fleet in the galaxy suggested capabilities that exceeded anything in Dominion's scientific understanding. They were not dealing with a primitive species that happened to possess advanced weapons. They were confronting something fundamentally different from any civilization previously encountered. "Recall all surviving units immediately," Korrath ordered, though he knew the command was largely meaningless without functional technology to coordinate the withdrawal. "Prepare the fleet for emergency departure as soon as systems can be restored." But as the hours passed, it became clear that restoration would not be a simple matter of waiting for systems to reboot. Engineering teams reported that their equipment had not been damaged or interfered with in any conventional sense. Instead, it appeared that the fundamental operating principles underlying Dominion technology had been somehow altered or suspended. Components that should have been compatible with each other no longer functioned together. Energy patterns that had been stable for millennia now produced unpredictable results. The human planet continued its rotation beneath them, now appearing less like a target for conquest and more like a sleeping giant that had been momentarily disturbed. Korrath realized that his mission had transformed from a routine pacification operation into something far more dangerous. They had encountered a species that could neutralize galactic-class technology through methods that violated every known law of physics. Over the following days, as Dominion engineers struggled to restore even basic functionality to their fleet, reports filtered in from across the galaxy that changed everything Korrath thought he knew about the universe. Similar incidents were being reported from other species that had attempted to interfere with human activities. Touch-based technology failures. Impossible defensive capabilities. Weapons that stopped working when used against human civilians. The patterns suggested that what had happened to his fleet was not an isolated incident or some kind of advanced human weapon system. It appeared to be an inherent characteristic of the species itself, manifesting when they were threatened or harmed. The children, in particular, seemed to trigger the most dramatic responses from whatever force protected them. As Korrath stood on his darkened bridge, staring down at the planet that had humbled the most powerful fleet in the galaxy, he began to understand that his career, his empire, and his understanding of reality itself had been fundamentally altered by a 6-year-old human child. The touch that had lasted only seconds had created consequences that would reshape galactic politics for centuries to come. The Dominion had built their empire on the assumption that technological superiority guaranteed victory over any opposition. Advanced weapons, faster ships, and more sophisticated defensive systems had allowed them to conquer species after species with minimal resistance. But the humans had demonstrated something that no amount of technology could overcome. They had shown that there were forces in the universe that transcended scientific understanding and military doctrine. Korrath realized that he was no longer commanding a mission of conquest. He was leading a survival operation in territory that operated by rules he did not understand. The question was no longer how to subjugate the humans, but how to escape from them before they decided that his presence posed enough of a threat to warrant a more permanent solution. The Admiral issued orders to abandon the mission and withdraw all forces from human space, though he knew that many of his soldiers were already beyond rescue. Transport ships lay scattered across Earth's surface, their crews either dead or stranded among a population that had every reason to view them as enemies. The technological failures made coordinated evacuation impossible, leaving hundreds of Dominion personnel to face whatever fate awaited them on a planet where children could disable starships with a touch. As his partially restored flagship began its slow retreat from Earth's orbit, Korrath understood that he was not just leaving behind a failed mission. He was abandoning everything he had believed about the nature of power and dominance in the galaxy. The humans had not defeated his fleet through superior technology or military tactics. They had simply revealed that the Dominion's entire worldview was based on a fundamental misunderstanding of how the universe actually worked. The child whose touch had destroyed his armada would never know the full scope of what had been accomplished in that single moment of contact. To that 6-year-old, it had probably been nothing more than a frightening encounter with strange beings who had invaded their school. But for Korrath and the Dominion fleet, it represented the end of an era and the beginning of a new understanding of what was possible in a galaxy where human children could rewrite the laws of physics with a simple touch. Behind them, Earth continued its rotation, now marked in Dominion databases not as a conquered territory, but as a restricted zone where the normal rules of reality seemed not to apply. The blue planet had become a symbol of something beyond military conquest, technological supremacy, or imperial ambition. It represented a power that could not be measured, predicted, or overcome through conventional means. Korrath's retreat from human space marked the first time in Dominion history that a fully equipped invasion fleet had been forced to withdraw without firing a single shot. The implications of this failure would ripple through the Empire's command structure, forcing military strategists to confront possibilities they had never previously considered. The humans had won their freedom not through resistance or negotiation, but by demonstrating that they existed outside the parameters of galactic civilization entirely. The Admiral's final log entry before entering hyperspace reflected the magnitude of what he had witnessed. Mission terminated due to encounter with capabilities beyond current understanding. Human species demonstrates defensive characteristics that render conventional military intervention impossible. Recommend immediate reclassification from conquest target to critical threat requiring diplomatic approach. As the surviving ships of his fleet disappeared into faster-than-light travel, Korrath carried with him the knowledge that everything the Dominion believed about power, technology, and galactic dominance had been challenged by a single touch from a human child. The ripple effects of that contact would continue to spread throughout the galaxy, forcing every advanced civilization to reconsider their assumptions about what was possible in a universe where the impossible seemed to happen with disturbing regularity. The story of Admiral Korrath's retreat would become legend among spacefaring species, marking the day when humanity announced their presence on the galactic stage not through words or demonstrations of military might, but through the simple act of a child being touched by something that should not have been able to touch back. In protecting one human child, something had protected all of humanity, sending a message that would resonate across the galaxy for generations to come. But this was only the beginning of Korrath's education about the true nature of human capabilities and the forces that protected them. The full scope of what he had encountered would not become clear until much later, when additional incidents forced him to confront the possibility that his understanding of reality itself might need fundamental revision. The touch that had destroyed his fleet was merely the first demonstration of something far more profound and far-reaching than anyone in the galaxy was prepared to comprehend. 3 months after the disastrous retreat from Earth, Admiral Korrath found himself standing before the Dominion High Council in the crystalline chambers of the Imperial Citadel. The same man who had once commanded respect through decades of flawless conquest now faced questioning about the most humiliating defeat in Dominion military history. His uniform bore fewer decorations than before, several medals having been stripped following the inquiry into what official reports termed, quote, the Earth Incident. Supreme Chancellor Vexis studied Korrath with eyes that had witnessed the rise and fall of countless military careers. Her silver skin reflected the ambient light of the council chamber as she reviewed the classified reports that detailed every aspect of the failed invasion. Behind her, 12 other council members sat in judgment, their expressions ranging from skepticism to barely concealed contempt. Admiral Korrath, Chancellor Vexis began, her voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. Your report describes technology failures that violate fundamental principles of physics. You claim that a single human child somehow disabled an entire battle fleet through physical contact. Such assertions require extraordinary evidence. Korrath had anticipated this moment for weeks, knowing that his account would sound impossible to anyone who had not witnessed the events firsthand. The evidence he possessed consisted largely of damaged equipment, confused testimony from traumatized soldiers, and sensor readings that made no sense according to current scientific understanding. He had expected disbelief, but the reality of facing it still felt like a physical blow. Supreme Chancellor, I understand the incredible nature of my report, Korrath replied, maintaining the formal posture required in the presence of the High Council. However, the physical evidence supports every detail. 300 ships suffered simultaneous system failures originating from a single point of contact. The pattern of technological disruption expanded outward in a perfect sphere, affecting only Dominion equipment while leaving human technology completely unharmed. Council member Drix leaned forward in his seat, his scaled features twisted into an expression of obvious skepticism. Are you suggesting that this primitive species possesses weapons technology superior to our own? That they deliberately concealed defensive capabilities that could neutralize our most advanced systems? The question struck at the heart of what made the Earth incident so deeply disturbing to Dominion leadership. If humans possessed advanced defensive technology, it implied that intelligence assessments had been catastrophically wrong about their capabilities. If they did not possess such technology, then something else had protected them, something that operated outside the known laws of physics and military science. That is precisely what troubles me about this incident, Korrath responded carefully. The technology failure did not appear to be the result of any weapon system or defensive installation. Our sensors detected no energy emissions, no electromagnetic interference, no quantum field fluctuations that typically accompany advanced defensive measures. The effects seemed to manifest spontaneously upon physical contact with the human child. Chancellor Valeth exchanged glances with several other council members before responding. Admiral, you are describing what amounts to supernatural intervention. The Dominion's expansion across the galaxy has been built upon technological superiority and scientific understanding. We do not base military policy on unexplained phenomena or mystical speculation. Korrath had known this conversation would eventually reach this point. The Dominion's entire identity was founded on the principle that advanced technology could overcome any opposition. The possibility that some force beyond scientific understanding could neutralize their technological advantages threatened the fundamental assumptions underlying their empire. Supreme Chancellor, I have served the Dominion for 60 years without question. I have conquered worlds that others deemed impossible to defeat. I have never submitted reports containing information I could not verify personally. What happened at Earth challenges our understanding of reality itself, but that does not make it any less real. The council chamber fell silent as the implications of Korrath's words settled over the assembled leadership. If his account was accurate, then the Dominion faced a potential threat that could not be countered through conventional military means. If his account was false or exaggerated, then one of their most experienced commanders had suffered a complete mental breakdown under pressure. Council member Zara spoke for the first time, her voice carrying the analytical tone of someone trained in intelligence assessment. Admiral, assuming your report is accurate, what is your professional recommendation regarding future contact with this human species? Korrath had spent weeks considering this exact question, weighing the potential consequences of different approaches against the risks of ignoring what he had witnessed. His conclusion was not one that any military leader wanted to voice, but intellectual honesty demanded that he speak the truth regardless of how uncomfortable it might be. I recommend complete avoidance of human space until we can develop a better understanding of the forces that protect them, Korrath replied. Any attempt at military intervention risks casualties that we cannot afford and consequences that we cannot predict. The humans have demonstrated capabilities that transcend our current technological paradigm. The recommendation sent visible shock through the council chamber. Never in Dominion history had a military commander advised avoiding contact with a primitive species due to their defensive capabilities. The suggestion that humans might pose a threat to the galaxy's most advanced civilization challenged every assumption about galactic power structures. Chancellor Villenis dismissed the council session without making any immediate decisions about future policy regarding Earth. Korrath was ordered to remain available for additional questioning while civilian scientists reviewed the technical data from his failed mission. The Admiral found himself confined to quarters in the Imperial Citadel, effectively under house arrest while his superiors decided whether to court-martial him for incompetence or promote him for uncovering a potential galactic threat. During his confinement, Korrath received an unexpected visitor. Dr. Mylan was the Dominion's leading expert on xenobiology and had been assigned to analyze the biological samples collected during the brief Earth operation. Her pale green skin and enlarged cranium marked her as a member of the Nexari, a species renowned for their analytical capabilities and scientific objectivity. Admiral Korrath, Dr. Mylan began as she entered his quarters. I have been reviewing the biological data from your mission. The results are unlike anything in our scientific databases. Korrath gestured for her to continue, hoping that her analysis might provide some explanation for what had occurred during the invasion attempt. If human biology contained unusual characteristics, it might offer a scientific framework for understanding their impossible defensive capabilities. The human specimens we collected show neural patterns that should not be possible, Dr. Milan explained, activating a portable holographic display that showed complex brain scan imagery. Their emotional resonance fields are not just stronger than expected, they appear to interact with quantum field fluctuations in ways that violate established principles of consciousness research. The holographic display showed neural activity patterns that resembled nothing in Dominion scientific literature. Human brain scans revealed structures that seemed to extend beyond the physical boundaries of their craniums, creating field effects that interacted with the surrounding environment in measurable but inexplicable ways. What are the implications of these findings? Korrath asked, studying the impossible data with growing fascination and concern. If these readings are accurate, human consciousness may be fundamentally different from every other known species, Dr. Milan replied. Their neural patterns suggest that their minds interact directly with quantum reality at a level that should require advanced technological enhancement. They appear to possess natural capabilities that we achieve only through artificial augmentation. The scientific data provided a potential framework for understanding the Earth incident, but it also raised disturbing questions about the nature of human evolution and development. If humans naturally possessed quantum-level consciousness interaction, then their defensive capabilities might be inherent rather than technological. Dr. Milan, could these characteristics explain the technology failures my fleet experienced? Korrath asked, though part of him feared the answer. Theoretically, yes, she responded after a long pause. If human consciousness can directly influence quantum field structures, then strong emotional responses might create localized reality distortions. A frightened child experiencing trauma could potentially generate quantum interference patterns that would disrupt electronic systems operating on quantum principles. The explanation provided a scientific veneer for what had seemed like supernatural intervention, but it also suggested that human defensive capabilities were not limited to specific individuals or circumstances. If any human could potentially generate reality-altering effects under sufficient stress, then the entire species represented a threat to technological civilization itself. Korrath's contemplation of these implications was interrupted by an emergency alert that echoed through the Imperial Citadel. High Command was receiving distress signals from multiple Dominion outposts across the galaxy, all reporting similar incidents involving human contact. The Earth incident had not been an isolated occurrence, but part of a pattern that was only now becoming apparent. Supreme Chancellor Vexis personally summoned Korrath to an emergency council session where the full scope of the human threat was finally revealed. Intelligence reports from across Dominion space described encounters between their forces and individual humans that had resulted in catastrophic equipment failures, inexplicable tactical defeats, and reality distortions that defied scientific explanation. Admiral, Chancellor Vexis began. It appears that your experience at Earth was not unique. We have received reports from 17 different sectors describing similar incidents involving human individuals. In every case, our forces suffered technology failures and equipment malfunctions that made continued operations impossible. The reports detailed encounters that followed disturbingly similar patterns. Dominion forces would attempt to interact with humans through standard diplomatic or military procedures, only to experience sudden and complete technological breakdowns when physical contact occurred. Ships would lose power, weapons would malfunction, and communication systems would fail without warning or explanation. Council member Drix reviewed one particularly disturbing report. A scientific expedition attempting to study human colonists on the frontier world of Kepler 442b reported that their entire research station became non-functional after a human child wandered into their laboratory. The child was unharmed, but every piece of advanced equipment within a kilometer radius simply stopped working. The pattern suggested that humans possessed defensive capabilities that activated automatically when they were threatened or distressed. The effect seemed strongest among their young, but reports indicated that adult humans could also trigger similar responses under certain circumstances. What is our current assessment of human expansion patterns? Chancellor Vexis asked the Intelligence Division. Council member Zara consulted her data tablet before responding. Human populations are spreading rapidly throughout their local star cluster. They have established colonies on 47 worlds and are actively exploring regions that border Dominion space. Their expansion rate suggests they will encounter our outer territories within the next 50 years. The timeline created a sense of urgency that transformed the human question from a theoretical concern into an immediate strategic threat. If humans continued expanding at their current rate, while maintaining their reality-altering defensive capabilities, they would eventually come into direct conflict with Dominion interests on multiple fronts. What options do we have for containing this threat? Chancellor Valeth asked, though her tone suggested she already suspected the answer would be unsatisfactory. Korrath found himself in the unexpected position of being the Council's primary expert on human capabilities, despite his desire to forget everything he had learned about the species. His expertise was based on failure and humiliation, but it was the most extensive knowledge the Dominion possessed about a potential enemy that operated outside their understanding of warfare. Based on my observations, conventional military intervention is not viable, Korrath stated with the certainty of someone who had witnessed the impossible firsthand. Human defensive capabilities appear to activate automatically in response to perceived threats. The more aggressive our approach, the more likely we are to trigger responses that could disable entire fleets. The admission that the galaxy's most powerful military force was helpless against a species that had barely achieved interstellar travel struck the Council chamber like a physical blow. Everything the Dominion had believed about their superiority and invincibility had been challenged by creatures who could neutralize advanced technology through emotional responses. Are you recommending that we simply allow humans to expand unchecked throughout the galaxy? Council member Drix demanded, his voice carrying barely contained frustration at the impossible situation they faced. I am recommending that we develop alternative approaches that do not involve direct confrontation, Korrath replied. Traditional military solutions appear to be counterproductive when dealing with a species that can rewrite the laws of physics through subconscious reactions. Chancellor Valeth considered the implications of this recommendation for several long moments before speaking. Admiral Korrath, you are hereby assigned to establish a new division within High Command, focused specifically on human studies. Your mandate is to develop strategies for coexistence with a species that possesses capabilities we do not understand. The assignment represented both a recognition of Korrath's unique expertise and a form of exile from conventional military operations. He would be responsible for solving a problem that might not have any solution, tasked with developing strategies for dealing with creatures who operated outside the normal parameters of galactic civilization. Over the following months, Korrath's Human Studies Division accumulated reports from across the galaxy that painted an increasingly complex picture of humanity's place in the cosmic order. Traders reported that human settlements were always peaceful and welcoming, but that any attempt to take advantage of their apparent vulnerability resulted in immediate and catastrophic equipment failures. Pirates who attacked human ships found their own vessels becoming mysteriously non-functional, leaving them stranded and dependent on human rescue operations. The most disturbing reports came from species that had attempted to harm humans through indirect means. Biological weapons designed to target human populations simply failed to function when deployed. Orbital bombardments of human colonies resulted in the attacking ships losing all power and crashing to the planet's surface. Even attempts to poison human food supplies resulted in the toxins becoming harmless upon contact with human biology. Dr. Mylan's continued research revealed that human defensive capabilities extended far beyond simple technology disruption. Their quantum consciousness effects seemed to interact with reality itself in ways that protected them from any form of harm or exploitation. The universe appeared to have developed special rules specifically for humanity, rules that made them effectively invulnerable to aggressive action by other species. Admiral, Dr. Mylan reported during one of their regular meetings, I have reached a conclusion that contradicts everything we understand about evolutionary biology. Humans do not appear to be a naturally evolved species. Their capabilities suggest deliberate design by some intelligence that possessed a complete understanding of quantum consciousness principles. The implication that humans might be artificial creations designed by some unknown intelligence added another layer of complexity to an already impossible situation. If humanity had been created as a protected species, then their defensive capabilities might be backed by forces that transcended anything the Dominion could comprehend or challenge. Korrath's final report to the High Council recommended a complete revision of Dominion policy regarding human contact. Instead of viewing them as targets for conquest or expansion, they should be treated as a fundamental force of nature that required accommodation rather than opposition. Like gravity or electromagnetic radiation, humans simply existed as part of the cosmic order, and any civilization that wished to survive needed to learn to coexist with them peacefully. The recommendation marked the end of Korrath's military career and the beginning of a new chapter in Dominion history. The empire that had built its identity on conquest and technological superiority was forced to acknowledge that some things in the universe were beyond their control or understanding. Humanity had become the first species in galactic history to achieve protection through simply being themselves, demonstrating that the cosmos itself seemed invested in their survival and prosperity. As Korrath submitted his final report and prepared for retirement, he reflected on how a single touch from a human child had transformed not just his own worldview but the entire strategic framework of galactic civilization. The little girl whose contact with Private Zek had disabled his fleet would never know that her frightened reaction had redefined the balance of power throughout the galaxy, establishing humanity as a force that even the most advanced civilizations would learn to respect and avoid challenging. The touch that had lasted only seconds had created consequences that would echo through the cosmos for millennia, proving that sometimes the most profound changes in history result from the simplest and most innocent of interactions. 25 years had passed since Admiral Korrath first encountered the impossible reality of human defensive capabilities. The former military commander now lived in quiet exile on the frontier world of Nexus Prime, operating a small research station dedicated to documenting the continuing evolution of human galactic relations. His hair had turned silver, and deep lines marked his face, but his eyes still held the sharp intelligence that had once commanded fleets across the galaxy. The universe had changed dramatically during those years. The Dominion's aggressive expansion had ended completely, replaced by careful diplomatic protocols designed to avoid triggering human defensive responses. Trade routes now detoured around human settlements not out of hostility, but out of respect for forces that no one fully understood. What had begun as humanity's protection from a single invasion attempt had evolved into something far more profound. Korrath's morning routine included reviewing reports from the Galactic Monitoring Network, an organization he had helped establish to track human expansion and document their ongoing influence on cosmic affairs. Today's briefing contained news that would have seemed impossible 3 decades earlier, but had become routine in the new galactic order. The Zephyrian Empire had attempted to establish a mining operation on an asteroid field that bordered human space. Within hours of beginning extraction operations, every piece of their equipment had suffered catastrophic failures that left their entire industrial fleet stranded. Human rescue vessels had arrived within days, offering assistance and medical aid to the stranded miners. The Zephyrians had been forced to abandon their mining claims and accept human hospitality until transport could be arranged. Similar incidents occurred weekly across the galaxy. Species after species discovered that any action perceived as threatening to human interests resulted in immediate technological breakdowns and equipment failures. The pattern had become so predictable that most civilizations had adopted strict protocols to avoid accidentally triggering human defensive responses. Dr. Elena Vasquez arrived at Korrath's research station aboard a human diplomatic vessel, her presence representing a development that would have been unthinkable during his military service. She was the first human ambassador to accept assignment to non-human space, tasked with establishing formal relations between humanity and the galactic community that had learned to fear and respect them. "Admiral Korrath," Dr. Vasquez said as she entered his modest laboratory, her voice carrying the same casual confidence that he had learned to associate with all humans. "I hope you don't mind the unannounced visit. I was in the sector and wanted to meet the person who wrote the definitive analysis of human defensive phenomena." Quote, "Korrath studied the woman who represented everything his former empire had failed to understand about humanity. She appeared to be in her 40s, with graying hair and laugh lines around her eyes that suggested someone who found joy in unexpected places. Her relaxed demeanor contrasted sharply with the formal protocols that governed most diplomatic interactions between species." "Dr. Vasquez, the honor is mine," Korrath replied, gesturing for her to sit in one of the comfortable chairs he kept for rare visitors. "I must confess that your willingness to work in non-human space surprises me. Most of your species seem content to let the universe come to them rather than venturing into potentially hostile territory." Dr. Vasquez laughed, a sound that seemed to brighten the entire room. "That's exactly why I'm here, Admiral. Humanity has spent the last quarter-century accidentally terrifying everyone in the galaxy. We never intended to become the cosmic equivalent of an untouchable force. But that seems to be what happened. Someone needs to start building bridges before the isolation becomes permanent. The conversation that followed provided Korrath with insights into human psychology that his years of military analysis had never revealed. Dr. Vexis explained that most humans were unaware of their defensive capabilities and the effect they had on other species. To them, the technology failures and reality distortions were simply things that happened around them, no more remarkable than gravity or electromagnetic radiation. The child whose touch disabled your fleet probably doesn't even remember the incident, Dr. Vexis explained. To her, it was just another scary day when strange beings visited her school. She has no idea that her frightened reaction changed the course of galactic history. Korrath found this casual attitude toward universe-altering power both fascinating and deeply unsettling. How can your species remain so unaware of capabilities that have forced every major civilization to revise their strategic doctrines? Because we're not really doing anything special, Dr. Vexis replied with a shrug. We're just being ourselves. The universe seems to have decided that we need protection. But we didn't ask for it and we don't control it. It's like asking someone how they make their heart beat or their lungs breathe. These things just happen. The explanation highlighted the fundamental difference between humanity and every other known species. While galactic civilizations developed technology to achieve specific effects, humans seem to generate impossible results through simple existence. Their defensive capabilities weren't weapons or tools, but natural phenomena that manifested whenever they were threatened. Dr. Vexis shared recordings from human settlements that revealed how their defensive effects had evolved over time. The original technology-disrupting responses had expanded to include environmental protection, biological adaptation, and even limited reality manipulation. Human colonies on hostile worlds found their atmospheres spontaneously becoming breathable. Agricultural settlements discovered that barren soil became fertile upon human contact. Even space habitats seemed to develop life support systems that exceeded their original engineering specifications. We've learned to work with these effects rather than trying to understand or control them, Dr. Vexis explained. Human children growing up on Mars don't need pressure suits because the environment adapts to make them comfortable. Families living near black holes find that space-time distortions somehow become beneficial rather than destructive. We've stopped questioning why these things happen and started planning our expansion based on the assumption that the universe wants us to succeed. The casual acceptance of impossible benefits troubled Korrath more than the original defensive capabilities had. If humans could unconsciously reshape reality to suit their needs, then their expansion throughout the galaxy represented something far more significant than simple population growth. They were gradually transforming the cosmos itself to accommodate their presence. Dr. Vexis, do your people understand the implications of what you're describing? Korrath asked. You're not just expanding through space. You're fundamentally altering the nature of reality wherever you establish settlements. We prefer to think of it as the universe finally getting some decent tenants, she replied with another laugh. But yes, our scientists have begun to realize that we're not just living in the cosmos. We're actively participating in its evolution. The question is whether that's a good thing or a terrifying responsibility. Their conversation was interrupted by an emergency communication from the Galactic Monitoring Network. 3 separate civilizations were reporting simultaneous first contact with human exploration vessels, and all 3 encounters had resulted in unprecedented technological breakthroughs for the alien species involved. Devices that had never functioned properly suddenly began working perfectly. Scientific problems that had puzzled researchers for centuries were spontaneously solved. Medical conditions that had been considered incurable were mysteriously healed. It appears that human defensive capabilities are evolving into something more proactive, Korrath observed as he reviewed the incoming reports. Your people are no longer simply protecting themselves. They're actively improving conditions for other species. Dr. Vexis studied the data with obvious fascination. This is new. We've noticed that technology tends to work better around human settlements, but we've never seen direct benefits extended to other species during first contact. It's as if the universe has decided that anyone who meets us peacefully deserves a reward. The development represented a fundamental shift in the galactic balance of power. Humanity had evolved from an untouchable force that other species avoided into a beneficial presence that actively improved the lives of those who encountered them peacefully. The same defensive mechanisms that had once disabled Korrath's fleet were now solving scientific problems and curing diseases for civilizations that approached humans with friendship rather than hostility. Over the following weeks, reports flooded in from across the galaxy describing the miraculous effects of peaceful human contact. The Andromedian Collective discovered that their failing energy infrastructure spontaneously upgraded itself after hosting human trade delegations. The crystal hierarchies found that their quantum communication networks achieved unprecedented clarity and range following cultural exchanges with human artists. Even the war-torn sectors of the Outer Rim experienced sudden ceasefires and technological breakthroughs after human diplomatic vessels arrived to offer humanitarian assistance. Korrath realized that he was witnessing the emergence of humanity as the galaxy's first genuinely beneficial force. Unlike every other spacefaring species, humans seemed incapable of causing harm to those who approached them peacefully. Their very presence improved conditions for everyone around them, creating positive feedback loops that encouraged cooperation and mutual assistance. Dr. Vexis, Korrath said during one of their evening conversations, "I believe your species represents something unprecedented in galactic evolution. You're not just another civilization expanding through space. You're a catalyst that's transforming the entire cosmic community into something better than it was before." "That's a lot of responsibility for a species that still argues about pineapple on pizza," she replied, though her expression had grown more serious. "But you're right that something significant is happening. Our latest reports suggest that the beneficial effects are spreading beyond direct human contact. Regions of space that have hosted human settlements seem to become permanently more hospitable to all forms of life." The implications were staggering. If human presence could permanently improve entire star systems, then their expansion represented the gradual transformation of the galaxy into a more benevolent and life-supporting environment. The defensive mechanisms that had once terrified galactic civilizations were revealing themselves to be part of something far more profound. Korrath's final research report documented the complete transformation of galactic civilization that had occurred since that first fateful touch between Private Zek and the human child. Wars between species had become virtually impossible due to human intervention and mediation. Scientific advancement had accelerated dramatically as human presence inspired breakthrough discoveries. Even natural disasters seemed to become less destructive in regions where humans had established settlements. "The touch that disabled my fleet was not an act of defense," Korrath wrote in his concluding analysis. "It was the first manifestation of humanity's true purpose in the cosmos. They are not conquerors or destroyers, but healers and improvers. The universe has chosen them to guide galactic civilization toward a more peaceful and prosperous future." As Korrath submitted his final report to the Galactic Archives, he reflected on the irony of his current situation. The military commander who had once sought to conquer humanity had become their greatest advocate and defender. The species he had viewed as primitive threats had proven to be the most advanced civilization in the galaxy, not through technology or military might, but through their unconscious ability to make everything around them better. Dr. Vexis departed Nexus Prime aboard her diplomatic vessel, carrying with her Korrath's complete research files and a message of friendship from a former enemy who had learned to appreciate the true nature of human power. As her ship disappeared into hyperspace, Korrath understood that he had witnessed the beginning of a new era in galactic history, one in which humanity would guide the cosmos toward possibilities that no one had previously imagined. The child whose frightened touch had once disabled a mighty fleet had unknowingly initiated the greatest transformation in galactic civilization. Through simple human nature, backed by forces beyond scientific understanding, she had begun the process of turning a hostile and competitive universe into a community of cooperation and mutual support. The touch that had lasted only seconds would continue to ripple through the cosmos for millions of years, proving that sometimes the smallest gestures can reshape reality itself. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.